Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 32 of Advanced Cost and Management Accounting. The topic that we have been discussing is strategic management accounting. We have spoken about strategy and discussed how strategy can be developed, how it is applied to business. What is, in fact, business strategy? In looking at strategy, we went on to see that organizations have their vision and mission, and they formulate a strategy which is to be implemented on a slightly longer term. So in the short term, you have a plan. That plan sometimes is called the operating plan. And the longer term method of doing business, technique, and all the aspects that you bring in, that is the strategy or strategic management. Managing that is strategic management. How does accounting play a role in strategic management? We discussed various aspects. One of the things that we talked about was the balanced scorecard, the concept of the balanced scorecard. So we are talking about means and techniques of trying to measure performance and try to match that with strategy of the business. The business strategy is going to span over a number of years, and therefore it is of importance that the performance measurement takes into account the strategy of the business. There has been traditionally a means of measuring performance. Traditionally, performance is measured through some well-known financial indicators. That technique is now developing, and a need is now felt to incorporate in the performance measurement aspects of the strategy, so that strategy can be implemented, communicated, clarified, and also managed. So we are going to today look at the concept of the balanced scorecard. Just to try to understand what we are talking about, basically when we talk about measuring performance, that's a very common aspect in life. It starts from the time when you are a student and you're in the classroom and you are appearing for exams. The exams are a means or a technique of testing your performance. And that performance is shown to you by way of a result card. So when you see the result card at the end of your examination or after the completion, the result card is a reflection of the performance of your skills in the exam. So this is now measuring your performance in a particular subject and showing the result. That's measurement. Another example of measurement and measuring results, and I say this because cricket is a very popular sport in this country, and many people are very fond of watching and playing cricket. So in playing cricket, you have the score book or the scoreboard, and sometimes the scorecards. This is trying to tell you what we mean by a scorecard. A scorecard is similar to that of a cricket scoreboard or a scorebook. The scorebook is showing you the name of the batsman at the top, the name of the bowlers at the bottom. It is showing you the details of scores of each individual batsman. It is showing you a total score. It is showing you the performance of the bowlers. It is showing you the wickets taken by the bowlers, the runs given, the boundaries, the sixes. So all that is the scorecard of cricket match. So we have, on the one hand, measuring the performance. You can see that from the classrooms in the result card. You can see the measurement of performance in a match, in a game of cricket. So the balanced scorecard is something similar. The balanced scorecard is trying to measure the performance of the business in various different aspects, The reason it is called the balanced scorecard is that it is not only looking at one aspect. Traditionally, as I said, performance was traditionally measured by looking at some financial indicators, profits, sales, return on investments, things of that nature. So traditionally, we were just looking at a few indicators to measure performance. Now the balanced scorecard, as we will see, is going to look at many other aspects within the organization's performance and measure all of those and provide what is then called a balanced scorecard. The different aspects that this scorecard is going to take into account are, of course, the financial aspect, which is important because all stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, all the lenders, and all suppliers are interested in the financial performance and financial success of the organization. There are several other aspects which are going to be examined, and they include the customer perspective. The customer perspective is going to tell us what we should see in our customers and how we should measure our performance from the perspective of customers. Looking at customers in view and then seeing how have we done in respect of customers. Customers, everyone is aware, customers are people who are walking in the markets, in the shops, and going out and purchasing. So the people who come and buy your product, they are your customers. That is the customer that we are referring to at the moment. The person and all the people, the public in marketplaces, different type of marketplaces, large supermarkets, small markets, streets, and so forth. All those areas where people are engaged in the business of buying and selling, in the activity of buying and selling. So these are the customers. So the customers who are buying your product, we have to see that perspective. And then we have to see an internal process perspective. So we are going to see an internal process perspective. That means what processes that we are doing. And I'll give you an example. If we are involved in, say, making furniture. So then we will have workshops of making furniture, cutting the woods in different sizes, large, small, have different machinery. So that will be the process, which will be an internal process. And the manufacturing and putting together and all the putting the fabrics and upholstery. So all that process is our internal process. If we have, on the other hand, a steel workshop, for example, then in that case, we will be welding and cutting different types of steel, heating and bending and making into different shapes. All that activity is our process. So the process, when we say internal process, this means the process that we are engaged in trying to make the output. So that is a perspective that we will have to take, that in order to have a good financial result, we must have a good internal process. And how we do what we excel in, how we can do whatever we do in the best manner, that is a perspective which is the internal process perspective. And the fourth perspective that we are going to look at is the perspective of learning and growth. All the time in business, there should be a focus on improvement, on growth, and on learning. One aspect of learning is to train the staff. Staff training is an essential and important aspect if we are to address the perspective of learning and growth. So we must have training sessions where different types of staff, different categories of staff, different levels of staff are trained in their own jobs and in their own work environment and what they're expected to do and how they fit into the entire. So if that the entire workforce needs to be properly trained. And this is something that businesses must focus on, that to provide an aspect of learning and growth, a training environment is an essential aspect to bring learning and growth about. So we have mentioned 4 different perspectives. We mentioned the finance perspective, of course. Then we talked about the customer perspective, the internal process perspective, and the learning and growth perspective. These are all the 4 aspects. When we look at the balanced scorecard, the balanced scorecard is going to look at all these perspectives and give us some kind of a score, some kind of a result, some kind of a measure on all of them. The balanced scorecard philosophy assumes that an organization's vision and strategy is best achieved when the organization is viewed from the following 4 perspectives. Customer perspective, how do customers see us? Internal business process perspective, what must we excel at? Learning and growth perspective, can we continue to improve and create value? Financial perspective, how do we look to shareholders? The balanced scorecard philosophy is therefore looking at a much wider perspective rather than just the financial result. As we mentioned, there are the 4 perspectives that we are going to look at. Each perspective is an important perspective in order to attain the final good result. Customers, how do they see us? What can we do to enhance customer loyalty? Customers are the people who are bringing in business. They are the ones who are buying products, and that's what's resulting in revenue. So how do they look at the organization and the product? And for that, perhaps we need to set different objectives to measure this. In fact, if we just look at the results will be achieved by having a good customer perspective. And similarly, for our own internal processes, the strategy, as we said, is something that identifies and sets out on a longer term basis what the organization should be doing and what it should be accomplishing. It is going to identify what things we must excel in. Now, having that strategy, there must be ways of measuring how we are doing in that respect in terms of excelling. So we must constantly have measures and objectives being set, and for that we have some kind of input in form of a result or a scorecard which tells us if we have aimed in our strategy to excel in a certain process, then how far have we achieved that. So the scorecard, now you can see, is a means of trying to implement the strategy. And the expectation is that the result will be obtained by implementing the strategy. Again, this was the internal process, and then we are going to look at learning and growth. Most organizations will find that if they try, that they are going to have a graph which is going straight and smooth, but that usually doesn't happen, especially in a highly competitive and global environment. If you don't continuously try to improve, if you don't continuously try to grow and excel, then the chances are that you're going to tilt and head downwards. So it's important that organizations view the learning and growth aspect, and they also set their objectives, and they also measure their performance with regard to learning and growth. The balanced scorecard is a strategic management technique for communicating and evaluating the achievement of the mission and strategy of the organization. So the balanced scorecard is going to be a way of also communicating the strategy of the organization to the various different levels, because you are going to set objectives and measure different types of activity that will incorporate what the strategy was, and this is therefore becomes a means of implementing strategy. And when you look at the results, then it becomes a means of evaluating your strategy. Whether your strategy, if it is implemented properly, is it providing the desired results? And therefore, when you have set out a mission and a strategy, very often you will find organizations having a statement of mission and vision. So organizations will set themselves some kind of a mission, and the mission is try to make some contribution to the environment and to the society. So if food industry has a mission, their mission will be something like providing safe and healthy food to society. If it's a soap and detergent industry, their mission could be of providing healthy families and germ-free environment and making sure hygienic and healthy activities and hands and children and cleanliness and so forth. So that's the kind of mission that organization will set, and a strategy will be to try to achieve that mission. So the strategy which they adopt, that is going to then be broken down and incorporated into this balanced scorecard perspectives of customer and process and learning and growth to result in a financial gain which shareholders and other stakeholders will be interested in. So the balanced scorecard, we are saying, therefore, has become a technique of communicating this. It becomes a very good tool, therefore, a mechanism, technique, that when top management has set themselves their strategy and their mission, then that is broken down and passed on to the various departments according to their need and according to their specialization and according to their functions. So then they have what is in front of them is their contribution to the achievement of the mission and strategy of the organization. So this is a slide which shows what a balanced scorecard might look like. This is a simplified version, and you will find that we have shown on the left-hand side the 4 perspectives of financial, customer, internal business process, learning and growth. And then on the horizontal side, we have shown the objectives column. There may be, and there usually will be, more than one, and there will be several objectives for each of the perspectives. So this is, I said, a simplified illustration of a scorecard, but in actual fact, there will be a number of objectives for the financial perspective, number of objectives for the customer perspective, and so on. Likewise, when we go to measure the objectives, there could be a number of measures. So you will set so the scorecard looks like this, that you will have the perspective, then you have in front of the perspective the objectives that you set for each perspective. And then the measures, how are you going to measure? What is going to be the measure? How are you going to measure that whether you have achieved the objective or not? And the targets you can set will be, when you are measuring, then you will have a target. That in this financial aspect, this is the measure, and the target that you want to achieve is such and such. And in the end, you have initiatives also noted down. What are the initiatives that the organization is going to take in order to meet the targets and meet the objectives? So this is basically the format of the basic format of the balanced scorecard. A more lengthier one would be to have several different rows for each of the objectives under each of the perspective. So as we have seen, scorecards, measuring and all that, now we have the balanced scorecard which is setting out the objectives. So we said that the perspective is going to be financial perspective. We'll see in a little while later in the session how we can set objectives, what are the different types of objectives that can be set, and then how to measure those objectives, and then to set some kind of targets for the measures, and perhaps the potential initiatives that organizations can take in order to meet those targets and objectives. So in order to provide a financial perspective, we might have objective financial perspectives, as we said, traditionally have always been there, and the return on capital or return on equity or profit percentage, all those are different objectives that can be set and that can be measured and targets set. So we'll see the illustration later on in the session. Implementation. To implement the balanced scorecard, the major objectives of each of the 4 perspectives should be stated. The chart shows that these objectives should then be translated into specific performance measures. There may be 1 or more objectives to each perspective and 1 or more measure linked to each. In the scorecard, firms should identify major initiatives for achieving each objective and also establish targets for each performance measure. So we are saying how to implement the balanced scorecard. Now, in the organization, when you start to implement the balanced scorecard, you will set objectives for each of the perspectives. And as we said, you can have more than 1 perspective and more than 1 objective in each case. So in the financial case, in the customer case, in the internal processes case, all of them will have probably 1 or more objectives. The objectives then, now this will be a chart, and the chart is then going to expand, and it will contain what are the specific performance measure for the objectives. How are you going to measure each of the objectives? And the best way to understand this will be through some example, and we are going to, in this session, look at an example of what might be the various type of objectives under each of the different perspectives and how measures can be set, performance measures can be set, and targets can be set for each of them. The scorecard is therefore trying to now expand the performance measure of the company, of the organization, to beyond just looking at the financial result. And as we said earlier, that the financial result are of course important and they must be viewed, but it is now becoming increasingly more apparent that the aspects and activities that drive the financial result, that give rise to good performance and give rise to good financial results, those activities must be monitored and those activities must be measured, and those activities have to provide the results, and therefore it is important to look at the performance of those activities in the various different phases and various different aspects of the organization. The aim of balanced scorecard. The aim of the scorecard is to provide a comprehensive framework for translating a company's strategic objectives into a coherent set of performance measures. That's how we are going to see the balanced scorecard. That you are going to have objectives and how those can be translated into a coherent set of performance measures. Coherent means that they are all aligned and have the same direction and same objectives. So that is going to avoid situations where, because of lack of focus on all activities, some activities of the company might be doing well, performance might be good, but if they are not aligned to the rest of the company and the rest of the activities, In other words, if they are not coherent, then the final result might not be achieved. A simple example of this would be that in a production activity, the number of units that are being produced is going to be a measure of performance. How much production can be achieved, what production can take place. If you have a large amount of production and growth, then for production that can be a good result. But that has to be aligned with the rest of the organization. Do we have sufficient sales order to sell the product? Do we have the market for that? Have we done enough marketing activity and other marketing efforts to ensure that all this sales can be completed? If that is not the case, just having a large amount of production will result in a large amount of inventory in hand and in the warehouse being stocked. And that is a lot of funds tied up, adding to the cost, and perhaps because then it is going to be held for a long time, there will be problems of rejects and problems of defects and things like that increasing as the holding period increases and we hold the inventory for a longer time. So that is an example where there is no coherence and the objectives of all the aspects of the company are not aligned. So it's very important that all the different areas of the organization are aligned in order to achieve a good financial result. So this is what the balanced scorecard is helping us to do. It is helping us to ensure that the objectives are coherent because we are looking at all of them together and we are measuring them and we have objectives for all different activities. That is going to ensure an overall better result. Only critical measures are incorporated in the scorecard. So we are now looking at the aim of the scorecard and we have talked about the usefulness. And it is important to realize that this activity, where it is beneficial, it is going to involve time and consume effort and activity. If we are going to include activities which are insignificant and not of that much importance, then we are going to end up spending cost and money and time on this activity. So the recommendation is that the critical measures are incorporated. The critical activities, the critical objectives. Otherwise, you might just have a large number of small little objectives and you're trying to follow up all little objectives, trying to measure each objective and seeing how. And whereas if it's not of significant importance, then the effort and time spent in trying to measure and achieve that will be greater than the benefit that it might provide. So we are saying only critical meaning significant, important. Size is a measure of whether it is critical or not, whether it is core business or whether it is secondary and supplementary business. And therefore, quantity and overall financial size is going to dictate what is critical and what is not. Cause and effect relationship encompasses all four perspectives of the balanced scorecard. The cause and effect relationship. There was a cause and this was the effect. This happened and therefore that happened. You do some activity and that you see a result of that activity. So the whole balanced scorecard is based on this cause and effect aspect. For example, if you want good result, then you have to have a good product. If you have a good product, you have to have good processes, excellent processes, efficient processes to minimize cost. It has to be based on some kind of customer research, what customers need, you are providing them that. And in order to provide good products and in time and low cost and what the customer needs. You have to have a trained workforce, efficient workforce. So this is all the cause and effect. You have a good product, the customers will like it, customers like it, the sales will go up, the sales will go up, the revenues and the results, financial results will be good. This slide is showing you an example of cause and effect. So we start on the left-hand side and we say, if we look at the financial perspective outcome, what would be a good outcome in the financial perspective? One outcome would be economic value added. If we have added some value to the organization, economic value, that is a good financial outcome. We can see then that this is driven by expansion of sales from existing customers. So in order to obtain value added, we need to expand sales from existing customers. How are we going to do that? This can be achieved by enhancing customer loyalty. Customer loyalty means the customer is loyal, he likes your product, and they will come and repeatedly buy the product. So if you are going to improve the loyalty and more people will come again to you, then the sales from existing customers will go up. And so you will have added financial and economic value. Now, how to achieve this enhancing customer loyalty? We go on to meeting preference of on-time delivery, part of internal process perspective. This on-time delivery is an internal process perspective, and we have to meet the preference of the customer. So this is again the cause and effect relationship, that starting from expansion of sales to enhancing customer loyalty, and the way to do that will be to meet the on-time delivery preference of the customer is going to create customer loyalty, and that is going to increase sales. Going further, the on-time delivery is achieved by short cycle time in operating processes. We have discussed cycle time, this point from starting point where material is received and completing point where the product is delivered. So on-time delivery, you need a short cycle time. And in order to obtain short cycle time, this can be achieved by training the employees. This is part of learning and growth perspective. So here we have shown a sequence of events of what we have described as cause and effect relationship. What has caused the effect? We need a financial effect that is caused by increase of sales, and the increase of sales will arise if the customers are loyal and they keep coming back and buying our product again and again. The way that they will do that is that if you provide them on-time deliveries, the way to provide on-time deliveries is to have a short cycle time so that you can meet the requirements and the timing of the customers. And in order to have a short cycle time, you need a well-trained and efficient staff, which is a part of training. So this chain of cause and effect aspect runs through the entire cycle, and that's where we are looking at cause and effect relationships, creating the balanced scorecard. So the balanced scorecard is providing all the different measures and objectives and results on all these aspects based on the fact that these are going to cause the improvements and the success required in the organization. Non-financial measures. So financial performance measures show financial impact of decisions. As their impact materializes, this can be long after the decisions were made. We have said traditionally financial measures were used and financial results were examined. What we have just said in the slide is that the financial impact will be seen long after the decisions have been made. The decision to buy, to sell, to improve processes, to improve cycle time, all those decisions need to be made. And then we are going to, at the end, see what the financial impact was. So there is a time lag if we look only at the financial aspect. So we are saying now that these non-financial measures are equally important to the good performance of the company. Don't look only at the financials. The financial comes at the end, but the non-financials, such as the cycle time, such as the loyalty of the customers, such as the process that you do, excel in those processes, and all those aspects are going to impact the financial decision. So non-financial measures are important, and the balanced scorecard is now, they are focusing on the non-financial measures also, and this is what perhaps is the reason for calling it the balanced scorecard. It is looking at financial as well as non-financial measures, and therefore there's a balance in the scorecard, in the performance measurement. Drivers of future performance are the non-financial measures relating to the customer, internal business process, and learning and growth perspective. Future performance, we have said finance is going to provide what has happened in the past and show the impact of the financial impact of what happened. So when we want to look at the future growth and future perspective, what is going to provide good financial results in the future, then we will have to look at the different aspects and perspectives that we have talked about. These are going to be the non-financial perspectives. We will have to look at the processes. We will have to look at how best to make our product excellent as we have designed. We are going to have to look at the customer side. We'll see what can be done to ensure customers are coming in repeatedly and are loyal to our product. And we will have to look at our cycle times, whether we can produce the product in a shorter period of time, reduce and eliminate the waste of process, the waste of time, the waste of cost, resulting in an efficient environment of production. At the same time, in order to achieve that, we will need an environment of growth and learning. So we will need a strong training perspective and strong training of our staff at all different levels. So these are the things that are going to provide the growth in the future. The finance is going to reflect everything that we have done and show a result at the end. So decision making is done, and it needs to be acted upon on many non-financial measures. So the balanced scorecard, in order to balance the two, perhaps this is why it's called the balanced scorecard. It is balancing the financial as well as the non-financial measures and trying to provide you not only a result of past activities, but how to drive future business and drive future growth and ensure good business results in the future. Organization's strategy. Most companies do not align performance measures to their strategy. Instead, they try to improve performance of existing processes, lower cost, improved quality, shorter customer response time. This is the result of some surveys that most organizations are not aligning the performance measures to their strategy. So the performance measures remain what they were traditionally, the financial result and so forth. Unless you align the performance measures to the strategy and improve focus, we have said that these are going to include the non-financial measures. You are going to not be able to manage your strategy, and strategy, whether or not it is implemented, is you will not be able to manage and measure and evaluate the strategy. So most companies are looking at what their past performances were, what their past performance criteria were, and they're just trying to improve, and they think, okay, cost is an important aspect, so as long as we can lower the cost But in order to lower the cost, you have to have a strategy. And the strategy that you have implemented, you have to see the performance of the strategy implementation, which will result in the cost reduction. So the cost reduction is the result that can be seen as a fallout or after you have implemented a strategy to improve and reduce cost. Reducing cost, improving quality. Improving quality is an important aspect for most organizations, and they are working on it on a fairly regular basis, trying to carry out different studies and make different type of research activities and things like that to ensure the quality is improved and stays good. But that, if you can then make that as a strategy and measure and set out the objectives, and then measure those objectives of examining each aspect of the strategy to improve quality, then you can see perhaps the result of improved quality at the end. So this is the aspect that we are saying. The organization's strategy needs to be built in, and it needs to be laid out in the scorecard, in the performance measurements that you set out, in the objectives that you set out. They do not identify the processes that are truly strategic, i.e. that require exceptional performance. Again, we are talking about most companies not aligning strategy, not setting out the objectives that are truly strategic. Overall, as we said, they are going to keep focusing on their existing performance criteria and measurement. But there is a need to identify separately what is critical to the organization's strategy. What is the process that the organization must excel at in order to differentiate and in order to identify its product and separate it from the others, the ability or the other strategy which it has to drive its business and to generate customer loyalty and things like that. The organization must identify the critical aspect of its processes and then measure the achievement and improvements and the objectives that have been set. So this is again a part of setting out strategy and ensuring that strategy is implemented and ensuring that it is part of the performance measurement. The objectives and accompanying performance measures relating to each of the 4 perspectives should reflect and operationalize an organization's mission and strategy. The word used here is to operationalize. So you set out the objectives and you set out the performance measures, and for all the perspectives that you have set, we are going to talk about this in a little while. We have mentioned 4 perspectives. Can there be only 4 perspectives in the organization? No. There can be more. There can be less. So the organization needs to find out the critical perspectives. And this, therefore, strategy is operationalized. Operationalized means that it is put into effect and it put into action, and the performance starts to be measured, and you look at on a regular basis the result of what you've done. So that's how the scorecard is then operationalizing your strategy, bringing the strategy into operations, connecting the two, connecting strategy and connecting operations, and looking at the performance and looking at the achievement of objectives. Linkage between strategy and performance. A company following a low-cost strategy will have different objectives and key performance measures than another which follows a product differentiation strategy. Experience shows where companies implement the balanced scorecard, they not only clarify and communicate strategy, but also manage strategy. The distinguishing feature of a balanced scorecard approach are the linkages between strategy and performance measurement and financial and non-financial performance measures, the cause and effect relationship. So we are saying that the balanced scorecard is providing a linkage. It is providing a linkage between the strategy and performance measurement. Meaning, you set out a strategy, and then you measure how you have done, and the two are linked together in the balanced scorecard, and the balanced scorecard shows you how you are performing and how successful the strategy is and whether it is being implemented or not. And it is doing this by looking at separate aspects. It's looking at all the perspectives. So you're looking at the different perspectives to achieve the strategy, and it is trying to combine the financial and the non-financial performance measures. So we look at both financial as well as non-financial. Hence, the balanced scorecard is providing you a completer picture of the organization, strategy, and achievements. We will now look at an example of an airline and see how a balanced scorecard analysis can be performed. The strategic theme is operating efficiency. Financial aspect, the question that you'll ask is, what will drive operating efficiency? And the answer is, more customers on fewer planes. Fewer, lesser planes, more customers are going to travel on a lesser number of planes. That is going to drive operating efficiency. From the customer perspective, the question will be, how will we get more customers on fewer planes? And the possible answer is, attract segment of customers who value price and on-time arrivals. So attract that segment of customers who value price and on-time arrivals. An internal perspective question could be, what must our internal focus be? The answer could be fast aircraft turnaround time. Turnaround time means the aircraft goes, flies passengers from one destination to another, and they are offloaded, and then it's reloaded, and the passengers board again, and it comes back. So turnaround time. So the fast turnaround time could be our internal focus, and that is going to provide on-time arrivals. The learning question would be, how will our people accomplish fast turnaround time? And the answer would be, educate and compensate ground crew, motivate them, use employer stockholder program. So we will look at this example, and this will set out what kind of objectives we are going to have, how to measure them, what targets we can set, and what kind of initiatives can be taken. Now we are going to look at the airline's scorecard, and the scorecard shows us, for the financial aspect perspective, the objectives that we can set are: 1, profitability. So one objective is profitability, that the company should be profitable and that profitability should improve and increase. How to measure? The measurement of this objective is to look at the market value of the company. We are looking at the market value or market value of shares of the company. That is going to show whether it is profitable or not. And the target we can set is a 30% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. This compounded annual growth rate is something that you will cover under your financial management studies. It is a measure of growth. So financial aspect, objective profitability, measurement is to look at market value, target is 30% compounded annual growth rate. Another objective is more customers. How to measure more customers? Measurement will be seat revenue. Seat revenue is the revenue that the customers are paying to travel on the airline, and the target set here is 20% compound annual growth rate. The next objective, financial objective, is fewer planes. The measurement is the plane lease cost. So if the lease cost is not increasing at the same rate as the customer revenue, that means that more customers are traveling on fewer planes, and therefore the growth has been targeted at 5% CAGR for the lease cost. Lease cost should increase by 5%, whereas revenue should increase by 20%. That will mean more customers are traveling on fewer planes. And similarly, you can see for customers, an internal process, and the learning perspectives, the various objectives and the measurement criteria, the targets that have been set, and some initiatives that can be taken. So this is showing you a balanced scorecard, an example of a scorecard which sets down the various perspectives, what type of objectives can be set in each case, how to measure them, and what kind of typical targets can be set for this. And also where initiatives can be taken, what initiatives should be taken. That gives you as some kind of a detail of what a balance card looks like. That's all for this session. Thank you very much.